All right, guys, I'm going to try this again. I had to reboot Thready. I don't know what happened. It just, the browser screen went solid white, and then it said at the very top, it said that Chrome had stopped responding, and then I hit Control-Alt-Delete, and the whole system just sat there, fans cranked up, and then eventually it said that everything wasn't responding. It said OBS wasn't responding. I had to shut the machine off by holding the power button in for about 10 seconds, and then powered it all back up again. So you will have to refresh your page. And telling you this is pointless because I can't communicate with you if you didn't refresh your page. So that's why I need you to be self-reliant. You understand? It's all starting to come together. Couldn't have planned that any better. All right, so let's give a minute for everybody to come back in. Wim has contributed €5. He says, here's to hoping you find a miracle to fix Thready's problems soon. It could be a RAM issue. I do have XMP turned on. It is XMP compatible RAM. So if I continue to have these weird lockups, my next step will be to turn XMP off and see if that helps. Beyond that, I would change the RAM out just to anything, literally anything else, to see if it's RAM related. These are the most difficult problems to fix because I just can't replicate them other than by using the machine and waiting for it to happen. And if it happens, once a day and I can go 2 or 3 days without it happening, then I guess I fixed it. That's the only way you can really sort of diagnose a machine like that. Is it driver related? Is it, a video graphics driver? Is it something with the motherboard? I don't know. I don't know yet. So Thready has not earned my trust. And that's why the cable management on Thready hasn't been done, because until Thready runs like I expect it to, I'm not going to spend any time fixing up the cabling because all that may end up coming back out. All right, we're back up to 400 people. Looks like most of everybody came back. We were over 600, so we still got we got 2/3 of everybody back, 460 now. 3/4 of everybody back, so. Earl Stone says hello, Solo says hello, and Stephen Cartwright said, I never had to refresh my page, you just came back up. Okay, well, see, what's interesting is whether or not YouTube then made that a separate video. If I'm offline between broadcasts for more than a minute, yeah. So what it did is it took the first part that I just did, and it's processing that right now as its own video for 35 minutes. And now this is the start of a new video. All right, so for people that watch this video first, they're gonna be confused as to what I'm talking about. So we're continuing on. We've been doing this now for 35 minutes, and this broadcast is only 3 minutes so far, so yeah. Thanks, Thready. All right. I'll get it fixed. There's nothing I can't fix. Just some problems take longer to fix than other problems. And it's not the chip and it's not the cooler. There's something else going on there. This is Thready in RAID mode, by the way. I restored it back with the NVMe RAID configuration with the 3 M.2 Samsung 960 EVO drives in a RAID 0 configuration. Maybe the RAID drivers, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I say there doesn't seem to be any benefit to it, other than the performance numbers look great. But, all right. We're back to almost 600 people watching, so now I think I can go back to where I was. Christoph Esch has contributed €5. He says, are the dogs out? Yeah, the dogs are enjoying the day today. It's a nice day. He says, I love your videos. Thank you, Christoph. Christoph, again, joins us from Germany. Wim wants to know if I consider the 9900K bleeding edge. No, because it's built off the same dies of the already established processors. The Core i7 is the Core i9. If it fits in a socket 1151, you're fine. When you go into that X299 or X99, you start getting into the upper echelon. That's where you start running into that bleeding edge, but Intel's been doing it far longer than AMD has. This new chip from AMD, the whole Ryzen series of chips are still evolving, and they're still improving them. And the same goes with the motherboards and the chipsets as well, as I demonstrated in yesterday's video. So I guess what I'm saying is when you, if you're the kind of person that just wants to set it up and start using it, Intel seems to be a lot easier than AMD, especially when it comes to drivers. But that being said, that regular AMD Ryzen 3, 5, and 7 are very close. It's just when you get into Threadripper, that's where you start running into some of these finicky issues. Colin Hilton says, I donated $100 via TechVets. Get yourself a voucher from Amazon. Oh, thank you so much, Colin. Thank you. William Smith has contributed $5. He says, good luck with Ready. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas regardless of things. Thank you, William. Thank you for your support and your kindness. Garth Clark is saying it sounds like it's going to be better to run Thready with stock everything. Yeah, until it is stable. Then that's when you can start XMP and trying to achieve greater performance. Although the performance is going to be pretty great at stock. But, you know, some people are never happy. All right, I think I'm caught up. We're back to the 640 people watching. Everybody's back. Let me get started with this now. And I'll try and keep an eye on what's going on here if I lose the stream again. I have a suspicion it's going to happen again. So this is the old streaming computer. Now I did build this on video, but what ended up happening is I had a cold and I was making some really bad mistakes. Some of you caught it live, but most of you didn't. My voice was harsh. I could barely speak. I tried not to speak throughout most of the build and just let my actions do the talking. And then after I watched the video back, it was so bad I just erased it. And that's why you don't see the build video for this. It was a big mess because I was supposed to have somebody come and help me with it. At the very last minute, they canceled on me. I was sick. And I said, you know, the show must go on. And I did it anyway. And, you know, maybe something I did when I was sick, maybe I shorted something out. And that's creating my issues with the streaming machine with regards to the USB stuff. Technical people tend to blame the hardware or the software when things go wrong, and novices tend to blame themselves when things go wrong. And in my experience, I've found that those attitudes generally should be reversed. A lot of times when a tech person goes, oh yeah, you know, it's that latest Windows updates that's causing the problem, it's actually not, it's them. It's something they did that a normal user, someone who, I wouldn't say normal, but someone who wasn't so confident with technology would have done, and then they blame the OS. And then you've got the novice user who says, I don't know what I did wrong, and it turns out it was a Windows update that caused it, and they didn't do anything wrong. Now, it's not always the case, but it seems to me that it's usually the case. And I'm saying that because I'm very much assuming I've got a bad motherboard, and I'm very much comfortable with technology. So I'm probably wrong. I probably did some mistake in here somewhere. So when I get this board out of here, I know you're like, get on with it already, but when I get this out of here, I'm going to run it on a test bench and see if it's still, you know, just the bare board with the CPU and RAM, keyboard and video and a mouse, and see if it will continue to have the USB connect and disconnect randomly when I I have to have the card reader plugged into it. And we'll see what happens. If it doesn't do it, then it must be something grounded or something I screwed up. Or maybe there's something on the front of the case here that's shorting out and causing that. But the USB connects and disconnects are happening with this device that's already been replaced. And then the front port audio phantom connections could be the switch inside the little switch that determines when it's plugged in. Or it could be something on the board. And this board to me just feels flaky. I get a feeling from it. And you're gonna see this mostly for me with things I'm unfamiliar with, right? So this is an AMD, Thready's an AMD. I'm having two problems with two AMD systems, no problems with any of the Intel systems. Does that mean that AMD makes makes an inferior product? It just means there's a different learning curve. With Intel, it's been around so long that most everything's done for you, and with AMD, there's some catching up to do with regards to things being automated. So I'm a little spoiled like that. And I don't think it has anything to do with AMD's chip, but rather the motherboard manufacturer in both cases. But we're going to find the truth out one way or the other, and this is just the feeling I get, my hunch. Edwards25671 contributes £1.99. He says, love watching the videos. Thank you, Edwards. And Darren Gilholm has contributed £2. Thank you, Darren. Shane D has contributed $2. Thank you, Shane. Brandon Miller contributed $5. He said, RAID for NVMe is in its infancy. I think that's your problem and not Threadripper. It is entirely. Entirely possible, Brandon, entirely possible. It's as valid as anything else. So we'll get to the bottom of it one way or the other. All in due time. Catherine says she swears on her Ryzen 1700X. Well, I swear at mine. It's the difference between you and I. Actually, I don't have a 1700X yet. That's what we're about to build. So let's get this all torn apart right now. Let's do that. So you'll see I put a SATA power splitter on here because the cable was too tight to fit up against the card reader to run this cable from the optical drive to the card reader. It just barely fit. So I just went on Amazon and I bought a very simple a SATA power splitter. It kind of looks terrible, but at this point I just want it to work. I don't care what it looks like. Irving T watches from France, has contributed €2. Thank you, Irving. Thanks for your continued support. And Shane D has contributed $5. He says, I love the channel and I passed your teachings on to my son and he built his first system a few months ago. That is awesome, Shane. Thank you. I'm also doing something else I said I wasn't going to do. Here's what ends up happening. I see all these other YouTube channels and they all offer some type of merchandise and it's like t-shirts and coffee mugs and I don't know. And I just don't want to do that. I want to be different. Well, you guys are asking me for t-shirts and you're asking me for Go Faster stickers and you're asking me for stuff that I feel like I'm a bit of a sellout if I do it. But you guys are like, I mean, it's not like one or two people asking. It started a little slow, but as the channel's growing, I'm getting more and more requests for it. So I've got some merch design in process. And I hope to have it available before Christmas so people can get, at the very least, some t-shirt designs. I don't know if you're gonna like them or not, but we're gonna try it and we'll see where it goes. And anything that brings money in to support the channel so I can do this full time, I guess I'm going there. Miraroa has contributed $10. He says, I love the realism, or is it she? I don't know. The person says, love the realism on this channel. Thank you, Carrie. Yes, it's very important for me to not be like everybody else. And it seems like everybody else wants to spit shine everything and polish everything and make everything look perfect. The world's not a perfect place, and I think there's more educational value to showing you mistakes and how to recover from the mistakes than to assume that everything goes right. I mean, when's the last time you watched anybody cook anything on, whether it's YouTube or, I don't know, it's a cooking show on television or YouTube, and they never added too much of something or forgot an ingredient? It's not realistic. They probably have, but they edited it out. So one of the benefits of doing these live is you get to see, it's not that a professional doesn't make mistakes. It's how a professional reacts and responds to those mistakes. That's where the lesson is. If we're not making mistakes, we aren't learning anything new. So it takes a while, a bit of the ego gets in the way to be embarrassed and feel like, oh, I just made an idiot out of myself. Well, no, you're a human being. You made a mistake. It's important that you acknowledge that mistake and don't make the same mistake twice. That's all. Now, if you're making the same mistake twice, well, I don't have any reassuring words for you at that point. Try and slow down and be a little more careful. I think too many people, too much pride to show that they make mistakes. You have to reach a point in your life where you realize, well, for me anyway, you realize this whole life is temporary. And I'm not perfect, and I don't want to convey that I'm perfect, and I don't want to convey that I know everything. I don't. I do know how to run my business. I've been running the business now since the mid-1990s. And most businesses in this field, they don't stay in business more than 2-3 years before they go under. So there's not very many businesses that have stood the test of time that mine has, and it's something I'm very proud of. I'm not boasting it. I'm just proud of it, you know? Little old me did that all by myself with nobody's help. And now with the YouTube channel, I'm simply sharing with you the attitudes that got me there. Whether you like them or you don't is irrelevant. It doesn't change my reality. But I hope that it helps you in your reality to guide you to wherever you want to be, if that has any relation to tech. Okay, my browser has crashed again. Chrome is crashing on me. Chrome completely just shut down. I'm using version 71 of Chrome, which is the latest version. I was just here, and all of a sudden Chrome it was as if I clicked the X and shut it down. Everything else is still running, obviously. And when I fired Chrome back up, it said, do you want to restore it? It's recovering from a crash. So I'll have to look into that stuff a little bit later. So, a plush toy. Stephen Bernstein says, you want a plush toy of me? Oh God. A plush Carrie Holzman holding a toy screwdriver. Stuff like that can be pretty expensive to have it made, but you know what? I'm not going to say I'm not going to do it, because I said I wasn't going to do live videos, and here we are. There's a gremlin in the machine. Yeah, something. Maybe I shouldn't feed it after midnight. All right, guys, I really need to get started here. I enjoy talking with you guys, but I do have to get some work done. All right, so I'm going to get this antenna off of here. This is my Asus, what is it called? An AC88U Wi-Fi. And if you pair this with the Asus AC router, you get some amazing Wi-Fi speeds. I'm getting like similar speeds to what I get off a LAN cable. It's that fast. Sometimes I've broadcasted my live stream and completely forgot to plug the Ethernet cable in and did the whole live stream off of the Wi-Fi and didn't even realize I was doing it until it was all over. And I went to put the equipment away and went, oh, I never plugged in my Ethernet cable. And this is magnetized, so you're gonna pull that up and we'll set it aside for right now. I'll just put it over here. Philip Drake's contributed $2. He says, hey, Carrie. Hi, Philip. Thanks for your contribution, Philip. All right. Yeah, so one of the things I had with Threadripper is I was trying to just stream some stuff to Twitch and let it run. And overnight, when I would check on it, I just have a blue screen waiting for me. So I'm just not sure what's going on with it, but I think a reinstall of Windows will be the start for Threadripper, and then separate problems over here with this machine that we're dealing with right now. So again, thank you all for your contributions. Please let me get some work here. So when I disassemble a system, I'm just taking all the wires off. I don't worry about remembering where they go back. Don't even worry about that. Just get everything unplugged so we can safely remove the system, remove the motherboard from the system. And that just means every single cable has to come off. I can leave the CPU fan power cable on because that's coming off with the board. I need to take the graphics card out. This is a GTX 1080, which has been running really, really well for me. No buyer's remorse there. Very, very happy with this card. And then to pull the graphics card out, there's a little release lever back here. I've got to push that over to the right. And this does take kind of two hands here to get in there and get that thing released. Come on. Normally, when you work on your system, you should lay your system flat. I generally work on them upright so you guys can see, but there are times where I have to lay them flat myself. Somebody in the chat had a good idea for me to order a doorstop and stick it into the Lazy Susan so it won't turn on me when I don't want it to turn, and that's working fantastic. I don't remember who made that suggestion, but thank you so much for that. And look how much easier the graphics card came out. I was able to get better leverage on that little switch. I'll show you that switch that I'm talking about if you're still a noob and you haven't seen me do this a million times before. You always put your graphics card in your topmost slot. Always, always, always. And you have to make sure that that retention lever is in the open position. And it's hard to get to, especially with some graphics cards and some motherboard or heatsink combinations can make it a really tight spot to get into. So you just got to keep that in mind when you're ordering your parts and you're putting it together, what you get to look forward to. I have to remove the SATA cables from the motherboard that go to the DVD drive and the hard drive. There's a 3 terabyte mechanical drive and the optical drive up there. And then I've got the Wi-Fi card to remove, and then we should be able to get the motherboard out. Yeah, I'm really liking this Wi-Fi card. It's probably one of the more expensive Wi-Fi cards you can buy, but if speed is important to you and you have a router that's compatible with that Wi-Fi standard, the speed's incredible. So you get what you pay for. I'm very happy with it. That's what that looks like. And I'm going to set it back here with the antenna. In fact, I'm going to put the graphics card back here as well. This is the EVGA ACX 3.0. This was originally purchased for the Zynos build, and the Zynos build has been indefinitely postponed until I can afford hardware that is up to the level of the case. It's a $2,000 case, so I'm not putting a $600 computer inside of it, you know. So that will happen at some point in the future. People are like, yeah, you've been saying that a long time. Well, it's a big investment. So in the meantime, still going to try and focus on what I'm doing over here. Now, one of the mistakes I'm just realizing I made is in my hurry to get this done. In order to clone this M2 to the new M2, I could have gone ahead and imaged it to an external drive right away. So I think what I'm going to do, this is an NVMe drive, so I can't put it in an external enclosure. They do make them for a Thunderbolt interface. It's a waste of money, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned. And I put the EKWB heatsink here on the NVMe drive. That's why it's got this chrome top to it here. Car-ey, can you confirm the power supply is good? You know, it could be a power supply issue on Thready. It's possible. This power supply I did switch out. This had a different power supply in it, and I did switch it out. So for the two different systems, depending on which problem we're talking about, this power supply was been switched out. That one over on Thready, that's the original power supply that Thready was built with. It's Seasonic. It should be good, but you know, the brand name doesn't mean it can't be bad. Reviewing, playing, and more RPM has contributed $5 Canadian. He says, I haven't been around a bit, so here's to show my support. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for showing your support. Are you a moderator? Yes, good. Very good. Thank you. So now I have a decision to make. I could quickly, all I need to do really is put the graphics card back in it and hook power back up. Yeah, let me do that so I can image the NVMe drive, because I need to restore the image over to this machine. So bear with me for a second. In my hurry, this is what editing is for, and this is why people don't do live videos, right? And this is all unscripted, obviously. So it's up to me to not only make sure all the equipment is running and we're broadcasting and everything's technically fine on the broadcast side, but also on the technical side to know what the job I've got to do. I don't need to hook these fans back up. I don't need any of that hooked back up at all. I don't need any of the USB connectors hooked back up. I don't need the audio hooked up. I do need a power switch hooked up though. So let me just plug in the power switch. I think I've got it on there, okay. And then I need to give power to the graphics card, so let's do that. I'm not even going to screw it back down because we're just going to take it right back out again. I need to give, I need a mouse and keyboard here, so I'll just grab the mouse here that I use. We'll grab the Wi-Fi, and since I don't have front USB hooked up, I'll have to plug it into the back. I don't need networking on this, so we don't need any Wi-Fi or Ethernet cable for making an image. Let's see, I need a power cable, so I've got a power cable over here. And let's get that plugged in. Make sure the switch is in the off position on the power supply. We'll plug the power cable in. It goes this way, Carrie. That's the way it goes. We need video. We need a video output. Ah, here it is. These are the twisted vanes cables I get off Amazon, just a straight through HDMI cable. And we'll go here from the back of the graphics card to HDMI port. And we're going to go into the capture card, which I'm going to have to configure really quickly since it's new in the Threadripper build. It hasn't been in there before, and it'll just take me a minute to configure OBS to see that. All right, that should be enough. This should be able to boot up, and I need my Acronis disk, which let's use the old standard here, which is my Linux-based Acronis media. That's what I always use, and I just have a separate Acronis bootable media for Threadripper to see the NVMe RAID. It won't see it by default. So let's get that installed here, or plugged in, I should say. Let's flip the switch to the on position. Let's turn this on. And let me see if I can get video now on. Give me just a second. That's not the one. That's it. Okay, that wasn't too bad, was it? So that's what the streaming machine looks like. That's what the desktop looks like. And my audio's going through about camera 1. Yep. Oh, that was easy. All right, good. Unfortunately, it didn't boot to the Acronis disk. So let me just hit the power button and shut this back down. And wait for everything to turn off here. This fan is disconnected and the front fan is disconnected because I unplugged them from the motherboard just a minute ago. Let's turn that back on. Let me grab this keyboard. And we'll hit F12 to go to the boot options, and we should see that USB stick is a boot option. It's booting so fast. All right. We can tell Windows to do it. If you run into this problem on your computer, where you can't seem to hit the key fast enough, we can go to keyboard and mouse aren't working. Well, wait, keyboard's working. Mouse is kind of jumping around. There we go. So we can go to the little gear icon here to settings. We go to update and security, and we go to recovery and advanced startup. And it says, you want to continue to use Windows 10 or use a device? I want to use a device. I want to use a UEFI removable device. That would be USB. And let's see if it'll boot to the USB without me having to do anything now. That's a great feature in Windows 10, by the way, that you don't have in Windows 7. Because of the UEFI BIOS and because of the speed with which it can boot, you may not have much opportunity to, yeah, there we go, we're booting now, push number 1, but it may not give you much time. Hello? Oh, I don't think it's recognizing the USB 3 port. So that means I got to plug into a USB 2 port that I don't think this machine has a USB 2 port on it. Let's try these down here. Let's see what happens. It did time out and defaulted to the number 1 setting, so I don't know if my keyboard and mouse will be recognized correctly yet. Let's see. Oh yeah, we're good. Whew. All right. So I'm going to use the same USB stick that I've got the Threadripper backups on. This USB stick is a SanDisk Extreme Pro. It's on sale, I think, for $85 for 256 gigs. Now, you may not think that's a good price. I guess it depends. You could buy, for about the same price, you could get a 500 gig solid state drive like this for about the same price and buy a $5 SATA to USB cable. And this, but it's going to be a sizable difference, right? But they both read and write super fast. If you don't mind the extra bulkiness, this will actually get you twice the amount of storage for the same price. But if you like the portability of this for 85 bucks for 256 gigs, that's the way I'm going. But if you have old SSDs laying around, it's something to think about. Giving them a second purpose, repurposing them. All right, let's go back up. We don't want disk, let's see, disk 1 is the USB because the capacity is only 2 gigs. Disk 2 says it's the USB I just plugged in. Disk 3 says it's 500 gigs. So disk 3 has got to be the one we want. And I disconnected the SATA cable to the hard drive, so you're not going to see the hard drive. The 3 terabyte drive is not on the list because it's one of the cables I unplugged. So by default, Acronis has already selected disk 3. Perfect. So I hit next. We're going to create a new backup archive. It wants to know where, so I hit browse. And I'm looking for where my images are. Ah, there they are, drive F. So I'm going to give this a name to identify it. We're going to call this streamer. Whoa. That was weird. Stream. You're going to drive me crazy. There's something funky going on with this wireless connection I've got. So we'll do streamer with Ryzen 1700, and I'm going to put in capitals before. In other words, we'll have a before and after image we can take. So this is the before image as it is now, and I'm going to click OK. And I always go to the backup method. I want a full backup. I don't want to do differentials. I don't want to do incrementals. I just want a full image. You can exclude certain directories or files. I don't need to do that. Backup options, I like to turn the maximum compression level on to save as much space, but it may take a little bit longer to create. And then I always turn archive validation on, and I do believe that this should be the default in Acronis, that you should always validate the integrity of your backup. Don't assume when it says process completed successfully that you have a working image. So once the image has been made, it's going to read it back, and then if it says it's successful, then it's really successful. And I'll hit proceed, and this will just take a little bit. We don't have that much data to back up, so I don't think this will take longer than about 10 minutes. And then I can proceed with disassembling everything. Grizzly's Play 63 says, I just ordered me a new motherboard for my Core i7 8700K, an Asus Republic of Gamers Maximus Code 10. Never even heard of that board. He says, all I need is a few more things and then I can build my newest system. It's kind of exciting, isn't it? Should be a good system. We've got 810 people watching. Welcome in, everybody. And here I am, a guy from Detroit living in Phoenix, and the Arizona Cardinals NFL football team is playing the Detroit Lions today, right down the street from my house. The very least I could do is turn on the TV and watch it, but no, because I'm a nerd, and I don't watch sports. This is what I do. But you know, when you watch the home team from where you're from, and the home team from where you are, I don't care who wins. And both teams are pretty bad this year, so kind of irrelevant anyway, but it's one of those occasions where if I go to a hockey game and the Red Wings are playing the Coyotes, that's also across, not literally across the street, but it's very close to my house. And I very rarely, I've been to like 3 games in my life, but those are the games I like to go to when I feel like I can't lose, because I like both teams. And the Red Wings, they've been very good in hockey for as long as I can remember. And they don't always have good years, but they definitely aren't having as bad of a year as the Lions have had year after year after year. And the Cardinals lately, they've not been good either. But what am I talking sports for? This is a nerd channel. Go sports. All right. Just stalling, waiting for this backup to finish. He's probably taping it. I have Cox cable here in Phoenix, and I have the DVR, and I set it to record all NFL games. And this entire season, all I've been doing is hitting delete all. I've not sat and watched one game yet. I've been so busy. The TV gets turned on maybe twice a week, and I look through what's been recorded. It'll say there's like 12 football games. It's eating up 80% of my DVR space. And I'm like, oh, got to delete those so I can record more NFL games that I can delete a week from now to free up more space for more NFL games I'm not going to watch. But ideally, you know, if there's a good game, if I hear that there was a good game, if time permits, I'll watch it. I do enjoy watching football in HD. It's one of the only sports really, football and hockey, because they're very fast, and well, the rules are a little questionable sometimes on football. For the most part, you don't really need to understand the rules other than the guy with the ball needs to go over there. And hockey, you know, the guy with the puck needs to go over there. It's pretty much, if you get that, you understand the game. And sometimes they're just amazing plays where somebody just does this outstanding act of athleticism, and you're like, wow, did you just see that? And it's for those moments that it's so enjoyable to watch. Sharon Idle says, tech is a million times better than sport, but I do watch a little UK soccer. Well, at least you called it soccer. So, gold star. Is Tech Vets with Mike on hold? Yes, Mike is very busy. I know he had broken his foot, and he's just been really super busy. I am trying to get Mike to agree to do one more show before the end of the year. Mike has generally got time in the past between Christmas Day and New Year's Day, that week in between. I'm hoping we'll find a window of opportunity in that where we can do a Tech Vets sort of a 2018 year-end wrap-up and update with what's been going on with our businesses. Where mine is sort of winding down as I try and focus more and more on YouTube full-time. I'm not getting rid of any of my clients, but if my clients go, I'm not trying to convince them to stay, and I'm not looking to replace them so I can focus more of my time and energy on YouTube videos. That's why those contributions are so important to me, because YouTube doesn't pay very well. So for me to be able to do this full time, which is my goal for 2019, and I'll still have the clients, I'll always have clients, don't get me wrong, I'm just gonna have a lot less of them. So that's what's going on in my head. Carrie, do you remember the marquee frame your buddy built for you? What happened to it? The marquee frame will come back out. It's sitting in my office, but it's buried under a pile of stuff. But it'll come back out when I'm right in the process of trying to reorganize my office. It's getting is getting a little crazy with the amount of equipment I've got, both production equipment and I think I've got 15 computer cases waiting for projects, and I've just run out of space to put everything. So I've got some shelving units that have been sitting in the other room for about 2 months waiting for me to put them together. And once I get them put together, then I can start organizing, putting things on shelf, and then I'll have access to the marquee again. But you'll see it again. Steve Larkin says, you gave me the confidence to build my own system, and Catherine picked out my parts and have a great build. That's awesome, Steve. Congratulations. Nothing's better than a system you build yourself. And the parts lists that Catherine puts together are identical to the parts list I put together. I made sure that Catherine understood what it was I was looking for in builds, and she made it understood what she was looking for. Like, she really does the research on the QVL list for RAM, whereas I don't. I just roll the dice on it. It should be fine. So Catherine goes a little extra effort that way, and I wouldn't recommend Catherine if I didn't totally have faith and 100% back her up with everything she's doing. She's doing such a great job, and the parts list she puts together require a lot of effort, and I don't know why she finds that to be fun, but I'm glad she does, because I will continue to recommend people talk to her for parts lists. She does a very good job. And the fact she does it for free, I mean, there's plenty of people that'll tell you parts lists for free, but most of them, in my opinion, they don't know what they're talking about. Catherine knows what she's talking about. And let me just say this to you guys too. I like to promote here that I've got the safest channel on YouTube. You come here, you're just like, you're like family, you're like friends. If you're nice to me, if you're supportive to other members, I got your back. All those people in blue, the reason they're in blue is they've proven to me that they're supportive and kind, and they represent the kind of community that I want to continue to emphasize here on the channel. And I would love very much, if you're not a part of it yet, I'd like you to be a part of it if you want to be a part of it. And if you become a part of it, if you're a friendly, supportive, kind, caring individual, I want you to know one very important thing. I will always have your back. We're almost done. It's validating the backup right now. So that means it's already created the backup, and it's checking it to make sure that it reads okay. It's been a long time since I've seen a backup fail validation, but I did have a version of Acronis a couple years ago that got me started on this, where I wasn't validating, and suddenly I started having backups fail restoration mode, and when I would go to validate them, they would fail the validation. Turns out there was some kind of bug in the software that Acronis fixed. And it's been very rare since I've ever seen a backup not pass validation. But it only takes a couple minutes, and it's really a peace of mind. And it's that whole once bitten, twice shy situation where, because it happened to me, now I want to check every single time. I don't want any more surprises. And this doesn't mean that the backup is going to work 100%, but it should. Otherwise, you're just rolling the dice and you're just assuming it. So I'd rather just spend a couple minutes, and there it is, it's already done. To just verify and validate that the backup is okay, because I don't want to have to put this all back together if it's not. So that time comparison is, you either roll the dice and don't validate because you're in a hurry and hope it works, or you spend a couple extra minutes to validate. Or if you don't validate and it doesn't work, in my case, I have to reassemble the system to be able to get it to fire up and do the backup again. So to me, the option I chose is the one that makes the most sense for return on investment of time. So that's done. I'm going to go ahead and shut the computer off now. So we'll reach back here, flip the switch off, and I'm going to, let's bring you up to the main camera. There you are. And we're going to go ahead and pull everything out now. We're ready to disassemble. There's the Wi-Fi. There's my Acronis. Ooh, flash drive is warm, but that's normal, nothing to worry about. disconnect, let's see, switch is off, disconnect power, disconnect video. I'm gonna pull the power cable from here now and here and remove my power switch wire. So we're back where we were before I jumped the gun. Now I can start to disassemble this. Let me get my overhead camera out and set up so you guys can get a better view. Let's see. Bear with me, this thing's a monster. It's a little awkward to carry it around. There we go. There we go. And then let's lay this flat. I gotta take the power cable off of the graphics card. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull the graphics card out because that's where we were before, right? There it is. And we'll set the graphics card over here. And I need to plug this camera in and turn it on. So let's get this fired up. There's that. And let's see if we can get that camera live here. Yeah, that works. I just need to adjust it. Let's see. Bear with me for a second. That's zoomed all the way out. I guess that's where I'm going to want to be, right there. All right. Everybody can see okay? All right. I got one other cable. I got the audio cable to take off here. So the tricky part when you're doing an upgrade is just to get the existing cables out of your way so you don't pinch them when you're putting the new parts in and get them trapped under the board or anything like that. It looks like I've got everything out of here. Stick that under there, back there. And let's remove the screws that are holding the board in. So we've got one here. And we got one here. One there. It should just be one more right here in this corner. There we go. Now the safest way to pick the board up is right by the heatsink, and we can just kind of pull up on the back of the board, lift it straight up, and then pull it back, sort of on an angle like this, and then out. And that's the board. Easy peasy. And I'm just going to set it back over here as well. Now I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. Ooh, look at all the dust. What was in there? Let's put this, we'll put it on the stove. That'll be good for it. All right. So here's our new parts. This is the Ryzen 7 2700X. Oh, Donnie Seegers contributed $2 watching on my new 4K TV. Keep up the good work. That's awesome, Donnie. I bet it looks good on a 4K TV. That's our 2 terabyte M2 SATA. And this is the motherboard I'm using for the build right here, the Aorus X470 Aorus Gaming, Ultra Gaming. I don't think I need, let's see, I'm going to need the I/O shield. It looks like an M2 screw I might need. This is the Q-Connect. Yeah, we can use the Q-Connect. We've got a Go Faster sticker in here. Driver disc. That's the M2 standoff, which is in a separate bag for some reason. I might need that. SATA cables I don't need. Temperature sensor thing I don't need. That's fine. Put all that back in there. Close this up. Just set that right over there. And I need a pair of scissors to cut this piece of tape right here. There we go. Okay. There's the new board. And we gotta get the plastic off of here. And I don't see any other plastic anywhere. I don't see any plastic on here. That looks good. All right. I guess we can start with putting the CPU in here first. So once again, got the CPU. I'll just set this stuff over there. There's the CPU itself. This is our cooling fan in this box, and that's all that's in there. So we'll just set that over here for now. And in this little box, there's also a little Go Faster sticker and the instructions. I don't know why we would need instructions for this, but they're in there, along with any warranty information. Go Faster sticker, gotta have that. All right, let's see if we can get you zoomed in a little bit on this. Let's see, where's my zoom? There it is. Give me a minute to figure out which way I have to go. Everything's there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the latch here. And then we'll take the CPU. And I think it's gonna go in, is it this way? All I'm doing is resting the CPU on it, and if it's in the right orientation, it just falls into the socket. And then I just lower the retention lever back down. CPU is installed, and now we're ready for the heatsink. So over here, I've got the heatsink. Get that opened up. Oh, it's this one. Okay. Got those extra cables. You see we've got thermal compound already applied on the bottom. That's why there's this plastic cover to protect that thermal compound from getting any dirt or dust or oils from your fingers or your skin on there. Just keep it nice and clean. Put that over there. And it seems like it's easier to put these cables on first. Let me just pull back a little bit here so you can see. It's sometimes easier to put these cables on first, or at least before we put the motherboard into the case, because they can be hard to plug in if you want to use them. And it's for controlling just basically RGB. This is an RGB header, and then this is just USB, I guess, for some AMD software to talk to the fan. I would think that one would override the other one, but I don't know. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't cared enough to look into it, if I'm honest. Now, ideally, it'd be nice for the AMD logo. Remember, this is going to sit in the motherboard, into the case, upright, but this case doesn't have a window. But it looks like this will be the direction we want to put it on, with the cable coming out this way. It's going to plug into the CPU fan header here. Like I said, thermal compound is already there. We leave these connectors on, these rails, or whatever they want to call them. I think this is a terrible mounting design. I much prefer to have screws to secure than these little plastic standoffs, and yet this is AMD's high-end cooler, so it seems to me the lower-end coolers are better. I've also found that AMD seems to not put enough thermal compound on these. For right now, I'm going to leave it as is, and we'll see how it runs, and if necessary, I'll take it back apart. But I'm going to leave it stock. Just leave it alone, and we'll see how it runs stock. I'm not going to fix something that isn't broke. Now, if it's built for a customer, I don't want to have to go back and revisit that customer for that. So something like that I may fix so that it doesn't become a problem, but because this is my machine, I'm willing to take that risk. Okay, I have to look around the other side here. Let me walk around. Got to make sure these little clamps are on. That side is on. And then let me make sure this side goes on. Come on. Pain in the butt. Screws are so much better, so much more secure. And this handle, you know, if you don't have this on right and you twist this little handle, it's plastic. I've broken those before. I just don't like this design. Unless you're buying, you know, a cheap cooler, a cheap cooler or a cheap CPU. But I just don't know what AMD is thinking by having this mounting mechanism on what's supposed to be their best stock cooler. Don't get that at all. So now that I've got the latches set, now I can grab this lever, and it's going to be really tight. I gotta push on it real hard, and I'm always nervous that lever is going to break. Okay. Phew, it locked down. And then the CPU fan is this top connector right here. You'll see there's two of them. One's gray and one's black. And this one closest to the edge is the CPU fan. And so that's where we're going to plug the CPU fan in. Can only go on one way, and it'll take a 3 or a 4 pin fan on that header. And then we can grab a little nylon zip tie, which I think I'm going to do right now, and just tie that up, because it's easier to do it before we put it in the case. So let me grab that. Yeah, that looks nice and pretty. Zoom back out here. Now, what is going on with those plugs? Where are those plugs going to go? Oh, they're going to go on this side. Well, that's going to be easier to get. That's fine. I don't have to put those on right now then. I'm not worried about it. You don't have to use these cables at all. These are totally optional, by the way. This is just for basically RGB lighting. And this case doesn't have a window, so I'm not worried about that. All right, RAM. We've got 4 areas to put RAM on this board, 4 sockets, and we always do sockets 1 and 2 first. And right down here, written in really small fine print, and most boards have this if you know to look for it. Which way do I move this? Right down there. It's kind of hard to see with the reflection of the light, but it says DDR1 right there. DDR, it says 1, 3, 2, and 4 right here. See? And that's telling us the numbers of each of these sockets. So I'm going to go ahead and open up these retention levers on both sides of the RAM modules. And to use 1 and 2 first means we're going to use this one, skip 1, and do this one. So these are the 2 we're going to use first. And then these are the 2 that'll be empty if we want to upgrade later. Always refer to your motherboard manual, but Asus has a funky way of doing it. Gigabyte's more straightforward. They generally, on almost every Gigabyte board I work on, they want you to use 1 and 2 first, which makes sense. You'd think you'd want to use 1 and 2 first, wouldn't you? So let me pull the RAM off the other motherboard, which I've got over here. And this is G-Skill Flare X RAM, designed specifically for AMD, whatever that's supposed to mean. If it's going to focus on me, I don't know. Will it focus? Let's see if I can get it to focus for you guys. There it is. And then that's the specs on the RAM right there. And once again, let's try and get that to focus for us. Each stick is 16 gigs, so by putting 2 sticks in, we'll have a total of 32 gig. I'm going to start here because it'll be easier to put this RAM module in now than it will be if there's one in front of it and then I have to go around it. So you can do it either way, but this is just easier. Once you've lined it up in the track, push down with your thumbs, one side first, and then the other side. Let me grab the other module and do the same thing. There is a notch, so the RAM will only go in one way. It won't sit in the socket. The notch won't line up if you put it in the wrong way. So always very gently line it into the socket, because if you start pushing down on it with your thumb and one side will go in but not the other side, you've got it 180 degrees backwards. You've got to flip it around. So you can avoid that mistake by just paying closer attention when you seat the RAM into the track. Make sure that notch is lining up. And then one thumb, other thumb. And then I'm going to close these retention levers. That's done. Now we can put our M2 drive in. And that's going to go right here. I got to take this screw out. And I need a different screwdriver for that. It's a finer tip. There we go. And yep, there's no standoff there, is there? So in the bag, we've got the little screw and we've got the little standoff that we're going to need. So let me grab my scissors. Some motherboards, they include that already screwed down, which I prefer than putting them in their little plastic bags. And why they separate the standoff from the screw, since they go together, they should be in the same bag, in my opinion. It's a little teeny tiny screw. There we go. Okay. Now the bottom of this, not all motherboards come with this. This is an M.2 heat shield and it's got some tape on it because it's got a thermal pad there. So we'll remove that tape just before we put this on. So for now, let's get our M2 drive ready to install. Yeah, a 2 terabyte NVMe drive is very expensive, so I just went with the SATA. As I mentioned, in real world use, I'm not seeing any benefit, so it's a huge price difference for no actual benefit in the way that I use the machine. I almost bought the Samsung version. The Samsung drive was $30 more, and I thought, you know what? That Magician software, as good as it is, isn't worth $30 to me. So I'll just go ahead and try Western Digital and we'll see how reliable they are. I think they'll be reliable. But as long as we have backups, who cares? I know that they'll stand behind their warranty. So we're going to put that right there. Now you see this motherboard does have another slot right here for another M2. You want to check your motherboard manual to see if they're both NVMe. One might be NVMe and the other one may not be. And this one has the standoff and screw already installed and this one doesn't. That's weird, right? So speaking of the standoff, now I can see where it needs to go. It's got to go underneath that right there. And you don't have to worry about making this super tight. Let me just take this out so we can see a little better. You can use a straight edge screwdriver if you want to tighten it down a little more than finger tight, although it's not entirely necessary. The important thing is that you're just securing the drive into place. You're not, all it's doing is preventing the drive from falling out. So once again, we're going to put that back into its track. That's good. There's just the little screw. Let's see if we can zoom in on that a little bit more. Let's go the other way. I always use a magnetized screwdriver. Always must use magnetized screwdrivers. These little screws are so easy to lose. You definitely want it to be held on the end of the driver for you so you don't lose it. Make sure we got everything lined up properly. That looks good. And remember, all this is doing is holding the drive there for us. We don't need to torque that down at all. And then we can take the heat shield, which is totally optional. We do not have to put this back on, but it's a good idea to use it. Take that tape off of there, so that's what that looks like. And we've got to put this little groove part here right into the slot up at the top of this connector, just like that. And then we just lower that down on top. And then we take that screw that we took out just a minute ago and put it right back in, right there. That is prepped the board. It's ready to be installed in the case now. And then we've got some documentation, probably just warranty information from Western Digital. Like I say, that's a 3-year warranty, which is pretty industry standard from all M2 SSDs, from all manufacturers. I haven't seen one that's different in the United States. And then the rest of this can go, I'm just going to put this away real quick. Oh, what am I doing? This has to go in here. And of course, you can see me in the top right corner of your screen if you're curious. I'm not switching the camera over yet because we're not done with our close-ups. Oh, this goes back in here. Not sure why I'm putting this all back. Keeps my OCD happy, I guess. There we go. There it is. Done with that. All right. I do need to get this I/O shield out of the bag. Set it down here, and the rest of this is trash. Now let me go grab the case and lay it flat so we can mount the board into the case. Planet Cryos has contributed $10. He said, Carrie, as I mentioned before, all you do has inspired me, and now I'm proud owner of a 22-inch Lazy Susan. This has made filming a lot easier. Hey, it's even the same color. Yeah, I think that's the espresso color, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's makes it a lot easier to work on computers. I'll tell you that. All right. So I need to get the old I/O shield out first and keep it with the old board. So we'll push on that and knock it out. And we'll keep that with the old motherboard because I'll need it. The I/O shields are custom to each board, make and model. And let's put this one in. Oop. Trying to run away from me. So this, I normally do this standing up so I can get a little more leverage on it. So just bear with me here for a minute. I'm gonna step around, try and get this I/O shield in the way I normally do it. Much better, much better. I hate working harder than I have to. All right, there we go. Anytime you put a motherboard in a case, it's important you make sure you have all the standoffs in the right place. So the Corsair 200R case that I'm using here today has pre-installed standoffs in standard ATX position, and that is 3 across the bottom, 3 across the center, 3 across the top. Now, let me just turn this way here since it's a little sideways for you. So this is the bottom, this is the bottom. So we've got 3 across the bottom, 3 across the middle, 3 across the top. And on the board itself, that should also match with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's good. I also notice there's a piece of plastic on this right here, which I don't have to take off right now, but it's bugging me. So I want that off. Come on. There we go. Now to put this in, obviously you have to rotate it in the right direction, which in this case, we're going to line up all these I/O ports with the holes in the I/O shield here. Make sure not to trap any cables when you do this, when you're doing an upgrade. Normally this would be something you do before you have any cables in place, if you follow along my other build guides. But on an upgrade or a repair, that changes things because you've got pre-existing cables you would not have on a new build. So just take a moment and make sure you're not trapping any of those cables. I can even plug that cable in right now. That's the CPU power cable. All right. Then I'm going to check, make sure all the I/O ports are lining up with the I/O shield correctly. And I'm going to push the board in towards the back. And there's a little post right down here. If I zoom in, let's go the other way, Carrie. Watch this hole right here. There's a little post. See where my finger is right there? There's a little post on that standoff where you can't put a screw. That's going to hold the motherboard in position for me. So if I just push and wiggle the motherboard, you'll see that post came right up through there. And now the board is in position and I can secure it down. Looks like a couple contributions came in. Let me give quick shout outs for those generous supporters. That is $5 from Grizzly's Place 63. Says, thank you, Carrie, for all you do. Thank you all in chat for being here for everyone, and Merry Christmas to all. Well said, and back at ya. Granddad 47 has contributed £5. He says, a case badge holder from Wrexham, North Wales. Oh, welcome in, and you are a moderator, and yes, I do remember sending you a case badge. All right, now using the same screws that I took out the other motherboard with, I'm now going to use to put this motherboard back in, but I might be a few screws short, which is why I always advise you to keep your old parts, any leftover parts on a build, because you never know when you might need them. just want to get these started. I don't necessarily want them tightened. Remember that middle row only uses 2 screws because that center post is going to be a place where we're not putting a screw. Well, it looks like I'm 3 screws short. The other motherboard only took 5 screws to hold it in place. This one requires 8. So let me, where did I put the screws? Hold on, let me go grab some screws. Okay, here we go. I need 3 of these. One. This is a tough one to see. Oh wow, I was way off on that. You can always remove the cable if you need to be able to see, by the way. I'm trying to do this so you can see it too, and it's making it so I can't see it. Good practice though. These are good skills to have, working blindly with cables in your way. I'm gonna lock that one down so I don't have to go back to it. All right, this should be the last screw in this corner right there. Once again, you just have to use a magnetic screwdriver to do this. You have to. Unless you're a real glutton for punishment. Now I'm going to make sure all the screws are tightened down. The screwdriver automatically turns off when it hits the clutch setting, which I've got set to the number 3, which you can tell right there. There's a little arrow, and this turns, and I've got it set on 3. And this is a Panasonic EY7410 driver. It's expensive. They're about $160, $170, but it comes with 2 batteries, a little carrying case. You have to buy the bits separately. It folds, it's got a little light. If you push this little button right here, you'll see this little light comes on. It doesn't do you much good though. And obviously if the screwdriver's straight, the light's not gonna help you. But there the light at least shines in the direction. And like I say, it's this little button right back here on the handle. And when I press it, you'll see the light go on and off. It's a great driver. If I hit this lock button, now I can turn it like a regular screwdriver. And then it's got a high speed and a low speed. I'm impatient, so I always keep it on high speed. Okay, let me plug this back on here. And let's go ahead and pick this up and we'll go back to the main camera again. There we go. There we are. Hello. Spare screws, we'll put those aside. And I'm gonna need another Coke, that's what I think. A couple other contributions have come in. Let me give some shout outs here. Frump99 has contributed $5. He says, happy holidays and good luck on your new business model. P.S. My Go Faster Carrie Hoseman sticker really works. Nice. And Lord Falk1 has contributed $5. He says he's been watching for 4 years now. Well, both of you are now moderators. Larry Fick has contributed $10, and Larry is already a moderator. Thank you all so much for your generosity. I do appreciate it. Let's see. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anybody on the contributions. Got it, got it, got it, got it. I think I got them all. Okay. All right. I think I'm done with this overhead camera for now, so let me get it out of the way. Is that off? Yeah, that's off. And I should be able to remove the camera now. Much easier now that I have this shoe for it. Let's see, come on. Hey, hallelujah. And I'll just put this over here, I guess. And let me get this off of here. Because we should be all done with this. I hope. This monstrosity. I mean, it really does help give you guys a good view, but it's a pain in the butt to, because of its size, to put it away and keep it out of the way. So just bear with me for a minute while I move it. And thankfully, Thready's been running without any crashes. Of course, now that I've said it out loud, I might have just jinxed myself. Oh boy, what a day. What a day, what a day. 875 people are watching now. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. I hope, if you're new here, I hope you'll be coming back and joining me again in the future. What you're seeing me build is going to be the streaming computer. It'll be the computer I use from now into the foreseeable future for all of my live streams. Right now I'm using the Threadripper 1950X to stream. That's a little overkill for a streamer. I've got the Gigabyte G connector, which lets us put the front switch, reset switch, power LED, hard drive LED into one connector and just pop one connector on. Takes some of the intimidation away of the cabling, but it also makes it a lot easier to do motherboard swaps when you just have to pull one connector with 4 wires rather than 4 wires individually. So I'm gonna put that on. I do like it. Asus has their own connector, but I don't like the way Asus implemented it because nothing secures the wires. Gigabyte did a much better job. Now Asus may say, well, we're the ones who did it first, but you didn't do it the best. That's all I'm saying. Not in my opinion. So this is labeled. It tells you where each cable goes, positive and negative on both sides, and you just follow that and line the cables up, and this takes just a minute. That's going to be the power switch right there. And then the power LED is going to go next to that. This is a, without having a cameraman and some lighting equipment, it's very difficult to show this to the viewers, but I do have other videos that show this cabling with close-ups, and it's all the same on all the motherboards. So don't worry if you need more detailed close-ups of this particular part. It does exist in other build videos that I've done. This is the reset switch that's going to go on right there. Come on, work with me. So part of my problem is I already cable manage this and I don't have a lot of slack to work with on these cables. And then that's the HDD LED. And now I can just take this one connector and plug it into this one plug, or vice versa. One plug and plug it into the one connector. And that hooks up all my front reset, power switch, power LED, hard drive LED with one plug instead of 4 individual wires. Easy peasy. I need to put the graphics card in, so let's do that now. Make sure that that retention lever is open. I'm going to plug both USB 3s in. This is the front USB 3 ports up here, and then this is the, this is the card reader, and this is the front USB. So I think I want to reverse these just for my own sanity. We'll do the case USB ports first and the card reader USB ports second. Those are all USB 3. And this is a sound for front audio that goes always in the bottom left of the motherboard over here. We've got the SATA connectors for the DVD drive and the hard drive. I'm gonna go ahead and, I'm gonna leave those disconnected for right now that I think about it. What is this? Oh, this is our front fan. We can plug that in right here. And then our rear case fan, that can go, there's a little connector right there. So I'm digging that most of the connectors are close on this board to where they were on the previous board, so I don't have to worry about any redoing of cable management. Now I can put my video card in. Where's my video power? There's video power right there. Oh yeah, that's gonna work out real nicely. So if I had gone with a different manufacturer board, then the cables would probably have to be remanaged, but I got lucky going from gigabyte to gigabyte. Everything seems to align well. Right there is where I need it. And get a couple screws, secure that graphics card into position. I'm not going to plug in the Wi-Fi card because I don't need it yet, and I want to make sure, for example, that the motherboard's going to recognize the second gen AMD. Some older boards won't. This one shouldn't be a problem because it is a 470 chipset, but we don't want to get too carried away until we know we have the basics working. So let me go ahead and give the video card power, and then we'll be ready to test fire it. I think that's everything for us to begin, assuming it boots. We'll check, make sure it's got the latest BIOS, and then I can restore the Acronis image. And we could be done, more or less, with the exception of hooking up the hard drive, hooking up the cables if we want onto the cooler, hooking up the, plugging the SATA cable in for the optical drive, plugging in the Wi-Fi card, and then plugging in the capture card. But like I said, I don't have to redo my cable management. That makes me happy. I'm going to plug my keyboard and mouse up on the front USB 3 port. That'll be a way for me to test to make sure that those are working. And I need a HDMI cable. We'll plug that in here, the graphics card. And then we'll plug the HDMI cable into the capture card on the back of the computer, which I had just removed for the camera. There we go. All right, flip the switch on. I'm going to put you over into the capture card now, so we'll go to that mode. So it says no signal because the machine is off. I'm going to hit the power switch, and here we go. Fans are spinning. All 3 fans are going. The 2 graphics card fans are going. Let's see if we get a power on self-test or post screen. Gonna need this keyboard for this. Come on, wakey wakey. Initialize for me. You can do it. There it is. Very good, that's what I wanted to see. And I want to see what version of BIOS this is. So I'm going to hit reset, which is a good way to test the reset button. And I'll hit delete the next time the BIOS screen comes up. And then we'll see what version of BIOS we have and see if a newer version is available. I'm just hitting delete over and over and over again. All right, good. BIOS is F3. Now I believe that the X470 Aorus Ultra Gaming motherboard latest version BIOS is F3. I'm not worried about setting the date and time because that will happen automatically when we boot into Windows. And there's really nothing I need to adjust in here at all. SATA modes and AHCI. We don't have an NVMe drive in this machine. And you know, if we want to mess with looking at the PC health status, we can do that. If you want to look at you know, the miscellaneous settings, you can. There's nothing in here we have to do. We can turn XMP profile on the memory, which is under advanced memory settings. We can enable that. And again, it's just optional. And then save and exit. Good. And then I need my Acronis boot disk, which I have right here. Look at how pretty that fan is, though. You see that? I don't need this door stop. I'm telling you, the door stop is genius, just to stop that thing from rotating when I'm working on it. So yeah, there's my Acronis disk. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Just hold the power button in until it all shuts down. And then plug that in back here, like so. Turn that back on. I shouldn't have to press anything. It should just boot right to the Acronis disk. Let's see. See what it does. Option 1. And then this is the USB stick, the 256 gig USB stick that's super fast. That's 85 bucks. I was telling you about SanDisk Extreme Pro. Now that Acronis is loaded, I'm going to plug this one in now. I didn't plug it in before because they're both bootable USB sticks. And so I wanted to make sure I booted off the right one. Now, let's see if I go to Recover, Browse. What is it, E? I don't know which drive letter it is. Streamer. Click OK. Click Next. It's only one place it can recover to. We're going to recover the whole disk and partition. And click Next. And it's going to analyze and look to see where we can recover this to. Well, there goes the parade of the dogs. This does take a minute, so I'm just patiently waiting for Acronis to analyze the image file. That's it. That's the 2 terabyte Western Digital M2 SATA drive. Click Next and Proceed. And now it's recovering everything. The dogs have tracked in some mud. Lovely. Let me throw that away before I step on it. Okay. So while we're waiting for the restore, if anybody has any questions, be happy to do my best to provide you some answers. Tech questions with tech answers. Just put all the rest of this stuff in here because I'm done with it. And I'm going to put these screws away because I'm done with those. This is an unusual way of using Acronis. Most people you would think would be upgrading from SATA to NVMe, but I'm going from NVMe to SATA because I need the capacity more than I need the speed. As I mentioned, I haven't noticed any real world difference with the speed, but I have noticed real world difference with the capacity. So, and Acronis is going to resize all the partitions for us automatically, or at least it should. And this will take about 7 minutes. It's going to put Windows 10 back on. It's going to act, all the software, the OBS software, Office 365 software, whatever software I had installed, Acronis is taking a picture of your hard drive, literally a photograph of every bit of data on it, whether that data is a temp file or that data is a program, it doesn't matter. It takes it all. And then when we restore it, then the question is, will it boot? Because it was set to an NVMe boot and we're going back to a SATA boot. I think it'll be fine, but we won't know until we're done. So we'll wait till it's done and we'll see if it boots. If it doesn't boot, I'll show you how to fix that. But I think we're not going to run into that. Looks like Catherine has posted a link for me to the motherboard BIOS. F4D is out. Update the AMD chipset driver before updating to this BIOS. Oh, that's good to know. I'll go ahead and download the BIOS. It doesn't look like it's anything that critical, but I do like to have the latest version. And you don't have to do that before you install Windows. But in this case, once Windows is installed, as they said, make sure you have the latest AMD chipset driver on, which I did install prior. As part of my diagnostic, I made sure I had all of the latest drivers installed. So thank you for providing that direct link for me, Catherine. You saved me a little bit of time there. Robert Jones says hello. Chris Cooper is saying hello. Russell Franzen and Jens Carlson all saying hello. It's not a beta BIOS. Somebody's mentioning a beta BIOS may be buggy. That's not a. It's got a D on it, but you shouldn't assume just because there's a drive letter that it's a. Just because there's a letter next to the number doesn't automatically mean it's a beta BIOS. It will say if it's beta though. Is this build the one you took donations for? No, that's the Threadripper build that I'm using to stream this broadcast right now. The Threadripper build that's causing me all my grief and headaches. It's also a perfect example of why I wouldn't build that for a customer. I would lose my shirt on warranty calls. Carrie, can you tell us the name of that huge tech book again, please? Yes, it's called Upgrading and Repairing PCs, and it's by a gentleman named Scott Mueller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R. Am I ready for the holidays? I don't think I'll ever be ready for the holidays. And then once again, Catherine Anna Hauserman has put the information there on the screen for you of Scott Mueller's Upgrading and Repairing PCs. Kevin Billerbeck says, hey, Carrie, watching you live on my new computer. I hope you like the photos I sent. I enjoy all the photos that the viewers send of their builds, and I'm just so proud of you guys for doing it. You know, so many people talk about doing it, or they work on excuses and why they can't. So I have a deep respect and appreciation for the people who actually get rid of the excuses and do it. And of course, the reward is something only people who do it can understand the value of the reward of it. So nicely done. It's taking a little bit longer to restore than I expected, but that's okay. It is what it is. So once again, if you have any technical questions, please feel free to ask now while we're waiting for the Cronus image to be restored. Technical questions only, please. Meaning about computers or Windows. With XMP enabled with a non-overclocked CPU, is that a problem? Nope. No, I don't think I think the reason it's taking longer is I might have plugged the USB stick in a 2.0 port instead of a 3.0. I can't tell on the back of this motherboard because it only shows 2 USB ports are blue. Usually on most modern motherboards, they're all USB 3. But this one, for some reason, let me just check the manual and see how many USB 3s I've got here on the back. Four USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports on the back panel. 8 USB 2 ports, 4 on the back and 4 through the internal motherboard headers. Okay, so if I've got, hold on a minute. So that there are, I did plug it into a USB 2. That's why it's so slow. What I did is I should have reversed it. The bootable Acronis disk is the one I should have plugged into USB 2. That's why this is taking so long. This has a lot of USB ports on it. I do see down below there's a USB 3.1 with a Type-C connector next to it. And above that are 2 USB 2s, above that are 2 USB 3s, above that are 2 USB 3s in yellow, and above that are 2 USB 2s. So that's 2, 4, 6. Is that right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 USB ports on the back. I got 2 USB ports on the front, and when I put power back to my USB card reader, that'll add 4 more USB. That should be plenty, but it is going slow because I did in fact plug it into the USB 2 port. But I'm just going to let it finish. I'm not going to start over, even though it'll be faster. Maybe at this point, we'll just let it go. Somebody's asking if the read and write speeds are good for their SSD. It depends on the make and model of SSD. So you should Google the make and model of SSD with the word specs, and then you can see what the read and write speeds are from the manufacturer. They're all not the same, and the only way to know isn't by asking the chat room a generic question about should an SSD run it. It depends on the motherboard you plugged it in, and assuming you're in SATA 3 mode, if you bought a cheaper SSD, they run slower, generally speaking, than say the higher end SSDs from, for example, Samsung. But yeah, go to the motherboard, go to the SSD manufacturer's specs and you'll see what the advertised read and write speeds are, and then see how your speeds compare. Don't let anybody tell you other than the manufacturer. Does Windows 10 use more resources than Windows 7? No, Windows 10 uses fewer resources. It was one of the very first times when a new operating system came out from Microsoft that had lower recommended requirements than the previous OS. Windows 10 required less CPU and RAM to run than Windows 8 before it. So it's Windows 10 now. I can't tell you with the 5th iteration now with 1809 Redstone 5 if those requirements have changed. I don't know, but I can tell you with modern hardware, it's fast. If you're trying to run Windows 10 on old hardware, not designed for it, you might get it to work, but it's just not going to work as well. Can I change my 1 terabyte hard drive with my 2 terabyte Western Digital external because I'm running low on space? It depends. Some of the Western Digital, if you bought a Western Digital external in an enclosure, you would have to open the enclosure to determine if that's a standard desktop drive. Some of the Western Digitals are not. You'd be better off buying a new drive, honestly. If it's a Western Digital drive that you've put into your own enclosure yourself, then you can take it back apart. You wouldn't even have to ask that question. If it's a Western Digital, 3.5-inch drive or 2.5-inch drive, which, is it a MyBook or is it a Western Digital Passport? Generally speaking, maybe. It depends on how Western Digital built that particular enclosure. Sometimes they're proprietary, sometimes they're not. So the best answer to your question is you should just buy a drive. They're cheap. 2 terabyte hard drive is like $60. They're very inexpensive. Carrie, do they make external card readers? Oh, of course, yeah. Does turning on the XMP mode make much of a difference? I've never seen any difference other than benchmark results, and even then they're very minor. People make a big deal out of it, but it's really, in the real world, for the way I use a machine, it doesn't make any difference. But if I've got it and I paid for it, I'm going to turn it on. Sometimes when starting my computer, it seems to stick on the BIOS page. Why? I have no idea, no idea. But I do recommend leaving a computer on, because when you're going to have problems with a computer, it's when you turn it on. That's generally when the problems are going to surface. So if you just leave the computer on and turn the monitor off, you won't have to deal with that anymore. And I realize it doesn't fix the problem, but the problem goes away since you're not booting up all the time. It would be impossible for me to tell you without seeing the computer in person if you've got something delaying or not spinning up in time for the BIOS, or the BIOS is waiting for something to initialize. Without looking at it myself, it'd be impossible for me to tell you. There's a lot of variables there, and it has to do with the make, the model of the board, when you built it, when the problem started, which BIOS version you're using, which chip, what drives do you have installed, have you tried disconnecting the drives, have you tried replacing the power supply. I mean, I can go on for half an hour, but a lot of this is stuff I can check very quickly if I have it in front of me. But if you're going to ask very specific technical questions, then I need to know the make and model. It's like the SSD question. You have to point out the make and model of the SSD. If you're talking about a motherboard, I need to know the make and model of the board. On top of that, I need to know what CPU is installed and what RAM. And again, what speed of RAM, and is it all matching, stuff like that. Because any of that could result in that symptom you described. Are you any plans to do videos with Subaru mic? Oh yeah, there's more videos with Subaru mic coming up. Carrie, can you back up more than one hard drive to a single drive? Well, yeah, just on the drive I showed you, it has 3 backups on it. And there's room for probably another 7 more. So it depends how much you're backing up and how much your storage the backup drive itself can hold. So maybe you can and maybe you can't. But technically it's possible because you just saw me do it. I bought the SSD SanDisk that you recommended. It's very fast. Yeah, the SanDisk isn't as fast as Samsung, but it's cheaper and it's fast enough. Most people aren't going to really notice the difference. So yeah, I do recommend those SSD Plus model from SanDisk. Very value-oriented. Also, AData as well has value-oriented drives. Does a RAM socket extender exist? Not that I'm aware of, no. And you shouldn't need one if you do the job right. If you're using the right parts and you know what you're doing, then everything you need is the way the laptop was engineered for everything you need. So if you're asking about a part that doesn't exist, it's because you're doing something completely wrong or you're using a part that's not right for the laptop. It's not compatible with the laptop. All right, we are almost done with our recovery here. USB 2, gotta love it. Almost done. I am so glad I moved the video files off. I moved about 350 gigs worth of video files off for the drive, so we wouldn't have to wait forever for the backup to take place and then the restore to take place on top of that. Randy Kravitz says, Happy Hanukkah from San Luis Obispo. Hey, Ronnie. And happy Hanukkah to you and yours. All right, here we go. Recovery operation succeeded. And we'll click OK. Actually, I don't even have to click OK. All I have to do is reach over here, turn the machine off, unplug both flash drives, and then turn the machine back on. We should be ready to rock. Acrona should have automatically resized the partition for us. We're going to verify that. We can update the BIOS too. Let's just make sure this thing will boot, because remember, we were booting to an NVMe drive, and now we're booting to a regular M2 SATA, and that's a different controller. So let's see if Windows 10 will boot without any issues. Off to a good start. System's nice and quiet. It's going to go through a whole bunch of hardware redetection when we first boot up. This is normal. So far, so good. We got to the desktop, so no problem with going from NVMe to SATA. Easy peasy. And I'm going to let it sit here for a minute while it updates hardware. Ooh, I am liking this. This is quieter. What do I have, the Samsung Magician software installed? Is that what that is? I can't see it, it's too small. No, that's my Stream Deck software. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. We're going to go ahead and let that do its thing. It may self-correct. Windows 10 is really good at self-correcting. So let it finish. It's writing its log file here. I'm going to hit reset, and we're going to reboot. Do you think some M2 or SSD should come with a Windows key? No, motherboards. Windows keys are tied to motherboards. Windows keys are tied to motherboards. Windows keys are tied to motherboard. I don't know why I have to keep saying this. Windows keys are tied to your motherboard. Nothing else. I mean, they're tied to all the hardware, but the motherboard's the main part. And if you switch it out, your Windows key may not work. It's tied to the motherboard. Okay, at least an OEM key. A retail key is different, but a retail key costs a lot more. All right, we're gonna let it sit here again and we'll see if it seems to be okay. Let's check, let's go to System up here, right click, Properties, make sure we're seeing the 2700X, and we are. 32 gigs of RAM, everything looks good. Let's look in the Device Manager. It wants us to connect to the internet to activate Windows because it senses a new motherboard. Everything looks good in here. And while that's idling, let me copy the latest BIOS onto a flash drive here. Okay, so here on the streaming computer, I had downloaded the latest BIOS from the link that Catherine provided to me there in the chat. And so I've just copied it onto here, and now I'm going to put it in here. So let me switch my video feed over again. And let's go ahead and do a proper shutdown. Everything looks happy now. So we do our proper shutdown. Let's make sure the machine will shut down. Waiting for the lights to go off. Even though our video signal stopped, the machine is still running. And I've seen this happen when I clone and some drivers get carried over that aren't compatible with the board and have to be replaced. That's often why this happens. But I want to make sure I'm giving it enough time and I'm not falsely concluding. It's not going to create a problem, it's just annoying that it's not shutting off. If I have to manually shut it off, all the applications are closed. It's not going to cause any data corruption issue. This is the final signal to the board that tells the power supply to switch off. It's a driver-related problem where it's not getting that signal. So it should have turned off by now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the switch on the back of the power supply. We'll force it off. And plug in the USB flash drive here. Let's turn it back on. And this time we're going to go to the BIOS, and we're going to update that right now. And even the BIOS update could address that too, by the way. Let's just do, let's see, we'll hit delete to go into the BIOS. Apparently I missed the opportunity. That's all right, we'll let it boot up here. And I want to check the hard drive partition size while I'm here anyway. Make sure that Acronis auto-sized it. Let's go up here. Go to the C drive. Oh yeah. Nope, it did not resize it. It's saying the capacity is 465. Oh, okay. When you restore an image from Acronis, it doesn't resize automatically. When you clone a drive, it resizes automatically. So I have to manually extend the partition. We don't need any software for that. Windows has it all in there. We just type in the word partition. There, part, and let's create and format. And it's going to show us the drive right here. I'm going to right click on that and extend the volume. Click next, click next, click next, or finish, and it's done. That's all. Now when I go to the C drive, we should see all 2 terabytes. That's better. See how painless that was? All right. Now let me try shutting it off again. So I'm waiting on these fans to turn off. Hey, much better. That's much better. All right, let's turn this back on. Now I'm going to hit end on the keyboard. That should get us into the Quick Flash utility. Keep pressing it like a madman. Thank you. Update the BIOS. Yes, that's the BIOS it sees automatically on the flash drive. Press to start. And we're off. We're updating the BIOS now. It's important you don't lose power. It's important you don't play with the mouse, don't play with the keyboard, don't play with nothing. Just let the BIOS update. Leave it alone. It takes a few minutes. Well, maybe 2 minutes. Doesn't take very long. So it's not like you have to be super patient. You just need to be a little patient. Catherine says, update the Intel driver. This is an AMD system. The only thing we have Intel is the LAN, I believe. So what LAN driver are you referring to? Don't forget to update the chip driver first. Don't forget, I said I already did that. Okay. About halfway done here. Getting there, almost done. The Intel LAN can cause that hang-on shutdown. Huh, well, it shut down, so whatever it was, it seems to have resolved itself. I'm not worried about it. And then I've also got the Wi-Fi card to add, and I have the video capture card to add. Once the stream is over, I'll do that afterwards. I obviously can't use the streaming card while I'm replacing the streaming card to stream me showing you how I replace the streaming card, the video capture card that I use for streaming. So I'll do that after the broadcast. We're getting there. 81%, 82%. Lots of things can cause the computer to hang on, shut down. Lots and lots of things. Now it's going to auto reboot. I'm not touching anything. Just leave it alone. Let it do what it needs to do here. Don't freak out that nothing's happening on the screen right now. There it is. The system may shut itself off 2 or 3 times, or it may only do it once. Depends on the design of the BIOS chip. You see how the screen just went off on its own there? So again, just leave it, be patient. There it goes. It's doing a second reboot. And now it's loading Windows. There it is. Yay. And now I can go and erase that BIOS file off of that flash drive. I like to keep that flash drive nice and clean so I can put other BIOSes on it. And only put one BIOS on at a time, so that way I can't make any mistakes. There we go. And I can eject the flash drive. Let's take that out. And now it's ready to be used for another system on another day. Okay, let's take a look at what the new BIOS looks like. Let's do settings. Go to update and security. We'll go to troubleshoot. No, recovery. Advanced startup. That's what I want. Use a device, no. Continue to Windows 10, no. Troubleshoot. Advanced options. UEFI firmware settings. Now when I restart, it should automatically take me into the BIOS without me touching a thing. Jazz hands. Yep. Yeah, BIOS looks the same. Let's just go through here, take a look. Boot option 2 can be removed. Well, you know what? We can leave that. We can leave it. Full screen logo, fast boot, we can turn that on. CSM support is on, that's fine. Like I say, there's really nothing in here you have to change. It's seeing my USB devices in here, like my AFT card reader. LEDs, you can have the LEDs on and or off during sleep states or hibernation. It's defaulted to off. We're not running an NVMe drive, so that doesn't apply to us. We're in AHCI mode. There's no NVMe RAID here, so that's all good. Everything looks good. The only other thing I would do maybe is look at, make sure profile's still on. It isn't, because the BIOS got updated. So we'll turn the XMP profile back on. We're going to leave all the voltage settings alone. We're going to leave all that alone. We're going to leave all that alone. And the fan sounds fine. I don't think I need to adjust anything in here, but I do like to turn the CPU temperature warning on if the CPU gets above 80 degrees. No, above 90 degrees. I want to know about it. And if the CPU fan fails, I also want to know about that. But again, it's optional. Those are just my preferences. Then I hit escape. We'll go over here to save and exit. And let's see how fast this thing boots up. That's pretty quick. I'm happy with that. Let me grab my flash drive that has utilities on it. It's this flash drive here. And let's plug that in. And let's run some tests to see how this thing performs. Now, because this is not an NVMe drive, obviously it's going to have much slower read and write performance, but we should be in the mid 500s on read and write speeds. Let's see, it's the C drive. Let's see what kind of numbers we get on this Western Digital Blue M2 SATA. This drive was $315, but I desperately need that capacity for all the video files I work on. Ooh, that performance is disappointing. Western Digital does their SATA drives as blue SSDs, and they do their black SSDs as NVMe. So if you see the Western Digital black, that's an NVMe SATA. Did I just say NVMe SATA? I meant to say NVMe SSD, and if it's Western Digital blue, then that's SATA SSD. But that number's a little low. So let me ask you in the chat, because I can't, well, I suppose I can do it now. Let's see, what are the performance numbers listed on this drive from Western Digital? So if we, you know what, you can even just go to the product page. Like, I know I bought this drive off of Newegg. Wrong keyboard. Let's see. Wait, maybe it'll say on the box. Yeah, it should be in the 500s. So why am I not getting it in the 500s? Something's not right here. I'm going to stop this test because there's something not right. Sorry guys, I interrupted the stream. I apologize for that. Let me let me stop the test because something's not right. And the first thing I'm thinking of is the SATA driver for the for the motherboard. So let me grab a new SATA driver for that. Let's see. Let's do, what did I say this was? X470 Aorus Ultra Gaming. And we'll go to the motherboard manufacturer's website. And we'll go to the support side and look under drivers for Windows 64-bit, Windows 10 64-bit. There's the audio driver. There's the chipset driver right there. Let me just grab this particular chipset. It's huge, 523 megs, and I'm sure that's the same one. That's the one from AMD that I already put on. But I'm going to put it on again, just in case the redetection process after cloning the drive loaded the Windows or the Microsoft driver versus the AMD driver. That could cause the performance hit that I just saw. That's my best guess at this point, because all I can do is guess until I run some tests. So we're going to start with replacing that driver. So I'm downloading it now on the streaming machine. I'm going to copy it over to that flash drive I just used to update the BIOS, because I don't have any network access on here yet. This is an X470. It says motherboard driver chipset B450. Why does it say B450 when I have an X470? There's motherboard driver chipset for the X399. Yeah, it says it's for B450. I don't understand that. Well, apparently that's the one that works also on this chipset. That's my best guess. So let's just extract that over onto the flash drive. So a SATA SSD should do, if you've been watching my channel, then you're well aware that a SATA SSD will saturate at 560 megabytes a second. Everybody knows that. So the person in the chat that's giving these false numbers is spreading false information or doesn't understand, or they're new here and they haven't seen for themselves the numbers, but that's not correct. So about 560 is what we want to see, and on the reads anyway. And the writes will vary depending on the type of SATA drive you've got. But what I'm going to do here is, like I say, extract these files. They're going right now to the flash drive, and then we'll put those in, and we'll see if that helps the performance. But it's going to take a minute to copy that. I'm extracting the zip file right onto the flash drive. Catherine's posted a link to the Western Digital SSD dashboard. I don't need that, but I'll download it. I don't think that's going to really give us anything. It's not like the Samsung Magician, but I'll grab it. It's good to have. Thank you for providing the link, by the way. But yeah, on Gigabyte for the X470 Aorus Ultra Gaming, the chipset driver that you download is the file name has B450 in it. So apparently they must share the same. and it's 1.8.10, which is the driver I put in from AMD directly on the streaming machine before I did the upgrade. Yeah, and Catherine's just posted that link to the AMD X470 driver. Yeah, it's the same driver. So I'm going to stick with the motherboard manufacturer's driver. It's the same version. Okay. That file is still extracting. So the zip drive I'm using, I'm sorry, the flash drive I'm using is an older flash drive, and it's USB 2, so it's a little slow. I should have used my faster one, but that seems to be the theme for today. I'm either plug it into a slow USB port or I'm plugging in a slow USB drive. I need to just get rid of all the slow USB drives. I need to just throw them all out and just stick with these SanDisk Extremes. They're making me happy. All right, we're almost there. Okay. Just waiting for it to finish. There it is. And these are WHQL approved, so Windows Hardware Quality Labs approved the driver, which is important in my opinion, because I have to support computers, you know, so I don't want experimental drivers. So I've got it all here, and let me switch back to my video feed, and let's extract, or remove rather, the flash drive I've got in there now. Set that up here because I'm not done with it yet. We'll plug this one in now. And I'm just going to copy the contents of that to the hard drive locally so it'll install faster. At least it's reading a lot faster than that writes, I'll tell you that. Yay! Now it's done. So these are the drivers. And let's go ahead and install these drivers now. Oh, it's saying 17.40 is currently installed. It should be 18.10. Why is it not offering the 18? Let's do an express uninstall. Let's dump that version. Thank you. Let's run setup again. 17.12. I'm so confused. I'll run it again. Local driver. Let's express install. Still not sure why I'm getting that. Let me reboot with the new drivers. And then we'll run Crystal Disk Mark again and see if that made any difference. I'm expecting to see 18.10. I don't know why I'm showing 17. Dave L's contributed £2. He says, thanks for all you do, Carrie. Hey, thank you, Dave. Thanks for your contribution and support. Let's see what happens now. Let's do Crystal Disk Mark again. Let me just do this one test here. See if our numbers are any better. Nope. It did not help us. So let me just hit stop on that test. We don't need to continue that. And then we'll just grab the drivers from AMD instead, although gigabytes, usually you're safer going from the manufacturer than you are from the motherboard manufacturer for the motherboard drivers. I don't think we're going to see any difference. I think it's the exact same driver, but we've got nothing to lose because it didn't fix it, so it's not like we're going to make it, well, I suppose we could make it worse. But ideally, it'll just do the same thing we've already done. But let me just take a look here because I know Catherine had posted the link to that. Gotta find the link again. AMD, there it is. Windows 10 64 AMD chipset drivers download. And while that's downloading, I can go back over to this machine and we can erase everything on the flash drive because we're done with that. These other drive letters, these are the USB, the card reader that's installed in the computer. Done with that. And I'm done with that one too. That can go in the recycle bin. Okay. Let's eject that. Grab a faster flash drive. It's taking too long. We'll just use the one that was in there. Yeah, this is a file I already had. So I'm getting the parentheses 1 in my download folder because, like I said, I had upgraded the streamer earlier. All right, so that's on the flash drive now. It's a lot faster. There we go. So now let me plug the flash drive in here. Okay. And there's the driver right there. Install. Let's try this now and see what it says. Accept and install. Local driver says 18.10. Restart now. That's what I wanted to see before, was a restart that indicated a new driver had been put in. I'm not looking for a specific performance number, but I'm looking to be in the ballpark of between, let's say, 530 and 560 on my read speeds. I'm very far from that. I'm in the 400s, which is why I'm concerned that something's not right. It drives me crazy when I see people that are trying to reach a specific number, because it may not be a realistic goal for their particular hardware, compared to somebody else that said that's what they got online, and so the other person thinks they should get it too. All right, let's try this again. 64. See what happens, if that makes any difference at all. Nope. We're still in the low fours. We're running about 20% slower than we should be running. So something is still not configured correctly for some reason. They're asking me if the Samsung Magician software is installed. It shouldn't be, but we can double check. Pretty sure it's not. Let's see. Go under apps. Let's see, Samsung. Oh, it is still installed. Let's take it out. And I want to remove that Samsung NVM Express driver as well. Thought I took that out, but I guess I didn't, huh? Not apparently. You sure you want to remove? Yes. This could be causing us the grief right here. Not that. That. Right there could be giving us some grief. Shouldn't be, but it could be. Take that out and restart. Okay. There we go. Let's see if this makes any difference. Nope. Still in the low fours. Something is just not configured right. which is very strange. Let me hit stop on that. And let me think about this for a minute. Let me eject that flash drive. And let me copy over the Western Digital utility, read what it tells us. Shouldn't need it, but this problem shouldn't be happening either. So let's just take a look here. Oh, I already had the Western Digital SSD software on the flash drive from a couple months ago when I downloaded it, but I'll replace it because maybe there's a newer version. So let's go ahead and take that out. Plug it back in over here. And again, that's because I got no internet access on this machine just yet. So I want to make sure everything's running properly before I hook it up to the internet. Although it may need some drivers off the internet that could address this too. So one thing at a time though. Let's see, where's that Western Digital SSD? What were the numbers we got on a Western Digital Blue before? Oh yeah, these are the numbers we should be seeing. Okay, let's go ahead and run this and see what it says. I can't get over how quiet this is. I'm hearing Thready over there. This thing right in front of me, I can't even hear it. That thing's 4 feet away, and that's louder. Firmware is up to date. Well, I'm not connected to the network, so how could it know that? Check for updates. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, this software is pretty useless to me. It's definitely not as nice as Samsung Magician's, the Samsung Magician software, but then again, no other manufacturer has an SSD dashboard that even compares with the Samsung Magician. But again, I didn't think it was worth an extra $30. It does show that the drive is in SSD 6 gigs per second. It's on a 6 gigs per second connection, so everything is correct. BIOS is configured correctly. That's just performance monitoring. Oh, and we got a blue screen. That's a new one. Restart. We could have a driver that was on the old motherboard that's giving us some grief with the new one. I might not have a choice but to do a fresh install of Windows 10 just to see if that is going to result in seeing the performance numbers I expect. And if that's the case, you know, I have a choice of trying to dig through to find the driver or just start with a fresh clean install of Windows 10 and build up. There's not a lot on this machine, so I'm not super worried about it, but I'm a bit surprised going from a Gigabyte AM4 based board to another Gigabyte AM4 based board. I wouldn't expect to see this kind of a problem. If we were moving generations or manufacturers, we went from Intel to AMD, or we're going from a a different socket type, then I would expect it. But this does have my OBS installed, it's got my Camtasia installed, it's got my PowerDirector, last year's version, but it's there, you know. One more try on this. I don't think it made any difference. That's definitely not right. Wow, 31. Yeah, something is definitely not. That's just sad. Wow, holy smokes, that's bad. Let's see what it does on the rights. I can't wait to see this. Wow, something's very wrong. Slowest SSD on the planet. Let's see what those write speeds look like. Well, I should say 500. Yeah, something's not right. Literally, the write speeds are not right. All right, stop it. Stop. Well, because this is a restored image, I'm free to wipe this drive and do a clean install of Windows 10, which I think is what I'm going to do just to satisfy my own curiosity. So I'm going to just grab the Windows 10 flash drive here, and I'm just going to do a nice clean install of Windows 10 and see if that solves the problem, because it's possible that the SSD is bad. It's entirely possible. So I'm just going to cut power. Put this USB drive in, turn it back on, and we're going to hit F12 to boot to that. I always hit the key repetitively. There we go. Some people hold the key down. There's no, do what works for you. That's what I want. SanDisk Extreme Partition 1. All right, so this is how I'm going to do a fresh clean install of Windows 10. And by the way, you can go into Windows 10 and use the recovery options to do a clean install from within itself. But because I'm running drivers from another machine, this is where we can run into some issues. So I'm just going to do a clean install just to make sure if the drive is going to perform that way with a clean install, that I'm going to contact Western Digital and probably do an RMA on the drive. And I'll just put something else in there in the meantime. We'll go next, install now. Don't have a product key. Windows 10 Pro. End user license agreement, custom, and drive 0. We're going to erase all the partitions on drive 0. There we go. Now it's all unallocated space, 2 terabytes. And now let Windows 10 partition whatever it wants for partitions. It'll format all those partitions that it wants, and it's going to install Windows 10. And then we'll put the AMD drivers back on, the NVIDIA drivers back on, and then we'll run Crystal Diskmark again with those 2 drivers. In fact, I should grab the rest of the Windows updates. Yeah. I'm going to keep it off the internet for right now. I'm thinking the SSD is bad. I've never seen an SSD write those speeds so slow. Something does not seem right about that. The top port where I plugged it in is the port that has the heat shield. That usually means that's the port, that's the fastest port. Not always. I can check the motherboard manual while I'm waiting. We'll see that, I mean, obviously both ports support SATA. SATA is whatever it is. So shouldn't make a difference which port we used. But let me just verify what the specs are with those two M.2 slots. I think they're both NVMe or SATA, I think. Well, they must be, because NVMe RAID was an option in the BIOS, so it has to be. One M2 connector, that is PCI times 4. And one M.2 connector, that is PCIe times 4. They both have SATA support. It's all good. So yeah, it wouldn't matter on this drive which socket I used. Maybe it's not seated in the socket properly. I mean, that's an option too. It doesn't seem likely, but taking it out and reseating it couldn't hurt. We're already rebooting. That's how fast it is to run this test. This is why having backups is so important. It gives me this freedom to run all kinds of experimentation to identify and isolate the problem as quickly as possible without worrying about screwing it up and making it worse, or customer data, stuff like that. Having that backup image is such a sense of freedom for experimentation to do whatever your imagination can dream up to try and resolve your problem. It's like a safety net that, you know, like a trapeze artist, you can do all kinds of flips and not worry about falling because there's a net there to catch you. That's what that image backup is for me. Not to mention that, of course, I still have the original board with the drive installed. So in a worst case scenario, let's say the CPU was bad or the motherboard was bad and the system didn't turn on, I could always put the old parts back in it and be no better off than I was before I started. I will say, as I took it apart, I was looking to see if I had shorted anything out or did something that would explain the behavior of that board with its, you know, thinking things are USB or being plugged and unplugged, and nothing looks wrong. Everything looks like I did it all correctly. So if I did something wrong, it wasn't obvious. I think the board is bad on the other board. Now with this board, might have a bad SSD, but I think it's driver related, only because of the restoration of the backup. But again, all I can do now is use my experience and make my educated guesses, and that guides me to what things I try first. Ultimately, I'll get to the solution, and you may choose a different path to that, and that's fine. That's what attracts me to the business, is the fact that I can do it my way, and you can do it your way. And if the end result is that the drive is performing where it should, the way you went about it is irrelevant. With regards to, you know, how much time you spend, that may determine whether or not you can afford to stay in business if you're doing it for a living. But if you're just a home user, it doesn't matter. You know, time is time. Patrick says the SSD temp was at 44 degrees centigrade, which seems too high. That's not high at all. You got to remember that that drive is underneath the graphics card. So not the best location to get it away from the heat. I might actually be better off moving it into another slot. And that could also, you know, heat could be relating, because when SSDs heat up, they do slow down. Christoph says the solution is to use Intel. Well, I don't know that we're not having a Western Digital problem here, Christoph. Okay, getting our first boot up here. And we'll click on yes. Yes. Skip. Skip. No. I'm just going to put, well, we called this editor, right? So we'll just call it the same thing. No password. Decline. No. Off. 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 Off and off. We've got all the power switches and, you know, the power switch, reset switch, hard drive LED, and power LED are hooked up correctly. I can see the power LED on. I can see the hard drive light turning on and off as the hard drive is working, or the solid state drive is working. And let's see, we're done with the flash drive, so we can unplug that, or we'll eject it first before we unplug it. Thank you. And we'll plug in the utilities one, which has all the drivers for us to install still on here. So we'll just take that. So what do I want? I want the graphics card. I want the chipset. I want the Crystal Diskmark software. And we'll grab the Western Digital SSD's software. So let's do the AMD chipset stuff first. Accept and install. Express. Restart the computer. Now with just that driver, that should be the only thing we need to test the SSD. I've got the graphics driver just because it'll improve video performance. I'm not sure if that'll have any effect on the SSD. It shouldn't. I'm impatient. I really don't want to install anything else. I just want to go ahead and run Crystal Disk Mark now. Let's see what our numbers look like. Same. They are exactly the same. Isn't that interesting? Something is wrong. I'm done with that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the computer down, and I'm going to move that M2 drive to the other slot, the other socket or slot. Slocket? Yeah, we'll go with that. Let me get the flash drive out of here. Get the flash drive out of here. Let's put you back up on the big screen here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to pull the graphics card so I can have access to the M2 drive back behind it. I need the screwdriver. Whoa. Now there's a couple of different tests I can do. I can grab another M2 SSD, which I just happen to have laying around, and see if it performs the same. I think I've got another Western Digital Blue of a smaller capacity that I can use for testing. This is why sometimes taking your computer to a shop for diagnostics makes more sense, because if you don't have the spare parts that a proper shop should have, you can spend a lot of money trying to figure it out. It is warm, I will say. It is a bit warm. And that may or may not be an issue. And that's what the heatsink is for. So just for grins and giggles, we're going to move this flash drive. Flash drive? We're going to move the solid state drive away from the heat down here to the lower location. But I don't believe that's a heat-related problem. Move it right there. And I'm going to leave these two screws out for right now, because I'm going to be getting right back in there in a minute, and we'll leave the heat shield off, and we'll just slap the video card back in. I'm not going to secure it in place because I'm just going to be pulling it right back out. I just want to know the results of this test. So I got to give the video card power, and then we can plug the computer back in. Plug the video card back in. And let's see what it does now. should have booted. Trying to get to the BIOS. All right. Boot option 1 is the card reader? I don't think so. Hard drive boot. Doesn't even show a hard drive. Set as in HCI mode, and it's not determining that any chip is installed at all. Doesn't even see one. Well, this is new. Okay, well, that explains why it won't boot. Doesn't see the drive at all. Very strange. Let me just why does it keep doing that? I'm not pushing anything. This thing's got ghosts. Let me take the drive back out and reseat it again. Make sure it's in the socket properly. It's definitely in the socket, correct? One more time. Now the whole thing just seems to be frozen. Let me try. I've got another Western Digital Blue. It's the exact same drive with a smaller capacity. Let's turn this off. Back on again. Let's go back in the BIOS. Better. It's not seeing anything on the drive. Very strange. All right, let's turn this off. And let's take this drive out and replace it with the other one I've got. Might just have an RMA sitting on my hands here. Don't know yet. So this is a Western Digital Blue that I bought for testing. This is a 500 gig version, but we should see similar performance numbers. And this will help me isolate if the drive is bad or if something's going on flaky with the BIOS or the board. Once again, you know, a well-equipped shop should have enough parts to swap out to do these tests for you. Not everything makes sense to do it yourself. You wouldn't want to do your own front-end alignment on your car because the machine to do it costs about $2,000. So unless you're going to do it about 20 times, it's cheaper to take your car to a place that already has the tool. All right, let's see if it sees that hard drive or that solid-state drive. It's not seeing it. It only sees the card reader. I'm going to unplug the card reader because it's kind of throwing me off when I see that. So I'm going to take the card reader off the board. Yeah, that bottom slot is both the M2 slots are supposed to be SATA and NVMe. In fact, I shouldn't be able to plug the thing in if it's not the right type. It shouldn't even plug into the socket. Let's take a look here and see. It goes right into the BIOS immediately. So it doesn't seem like I've got a bad drive. What else could it be? Well, now wait a minute. That bottom one may be NVMe only. Yeah, the bottom socket is NVMe only. And the top socket is NVMe or SATA. I thought they were both. I misread it. So that explains why it's not seeing it. Well, that at least makes sense anyway. Though I'm surprised. It used to be the other way around. Used to have both that would support SATA and one would support NVMe. Now the chipsets have developed to a point where where the opposite is true. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this and pull the graphics card back out. And we're going to move this drive into the top slot. And again, I'm going to leave the heat shield off of it for testing purposes. And we'll see if we see the same performance numbers, and then we know it's not the drive. If we get the same performance numbers, we know it's something else. Now, whether or not that means something is bad, not necessarily. It could be something's just not configured properly in the BIOS, for example. It would have to be in the BIOS because we're on a clean install of Windows. Get you guys a better view of this. There you go. So most people, when they build a computer, they wouldn't think to check that. They would just say, oh, it boots, it works, I did it right. You can see it boots and it works, but I'm just not seeing the numbers I want, and I want to stop now before I go any further, because I don't want to dig a hole any deeper than it needs to be before I move forward with the rest of the configuration. Just be wasting my time. I'm not going to be completely happy with the end result if I'm already not getting the performance I need right out of the gate. So let me just set that down and let me take the drive out and move it back up to that top slot. I'm just surprised that the drive went in there, because it was my understanding that if it was NVMe only, that a SATA-based drive wouldn't fit. But apparently that's not the case. I mean, that's what the little slots are for in the SSD drives on the M2, is to determine, you can look at the number of cutouts to see if it's SATA or PCI Express, as I explained in a previous video. But apparently, there's more to it. All right. I'll put the graphics card back in. Like I said, I'm going to leave the heat shield off of it for right now. Okay, and then we'll give it power again to the graphics card. And then power here. Power here. And then we're going to have to install Windows 10 again on this flash drive. I mean, on this solid state drive. Okay, here we go. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into the BIOS, and I'm going to reset the BIOS. Maybe something in the BIOS update carried over from the old BIOS. So we'll just load the defaults here. Load optimized defaults, yes. And then save and exit. Operating system wasn't found. It should boot to that USB drive. Did I plug the wrong USB drive in? Yes, that's why. Wrong USB drive. That's not a bootable USB drive, Carrie. Let's try that again. Next, install. Don't have a product key. Windows 10 Pro. All right. We'll just give this a minute to install. And we'll do this exact same thing that we did before, and we'll see if that has any difference in performance or not. Contribution just came in from Adam Sleeth, is $20 Australian dollars. His great stream as usual. Well, I wish it was. Thank you for the first of all for the support and the contribution, but this is not making me happy. I expect this to go lickety split. It's all new parts. Everything should be happy and copacetic, and it's just giving me a hard time. And I'm just trying to isolate if it's related to the board or the SSD at this point. And I'm about to find out. Still waiting on our first boot here from the Windows install. Let's just take a minute. It expands files. I do tell my clients, a lot of my job is just waiting. This is why I don't like to work on site. If a customer is being billed hourly, they certainly don't like the amount of time it takes, but especially when customers call you when they've got older computers. Those older computers are slower. And the reason they have an older computer is usually because they don't have much money. Yet the older computer takes much more time to work on, which costs more money to work on. So you can appreciate the irony in that, right? There we go, finally. Seems awfully slow. Okay. United States. Yes. Skip. Skip. No. Put in decline. No. 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 And no. I just ordered a mini ITX board to use with the Ryzen 2400G I've got, and I've got some RAM left over, and I'm going to replace the motherboard I've got in the N-Case M1, which is a really tiny gaming case. I want to use it to stream with, and the Core i3 it's got in there, it's like a Z97 chipset. It doesn't have enough oomph with the built-in video. And for what a video card will cost me, I can just buy a board. And using the AMD processor, the Ryzen 2400G I've got left over, with the RAM I've got left over, and I don't know what I'll take that Z97 Core i3 and slap it into one of the Silverstone cases that they sent me. I could put it in the Fractal Design. Nah, I should use the Fractal Design for a nicer board. So I'll just use one of the cheap Silverstone cases. I'll slap it in there and we'll get rid of it that way. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. Ben DeCours contributed $4.99. Thank you, Ben. All right, now I can eject the Windows 10 install drive and put my utilities drive back, because I had the utilities drive in there. That's why it wasn't booting. The utilities drive is not bootable. I don't know what I was thinking. Sometimes I get a little overwhelmed. All right, so we want the NVIDIA driver, the AMD chipset driver, and the Crystal Diskmark software, and the Western Digital dashboard software. Okay, so once again, we'll just repeat what we've already done. We're going to do the AMD chipset software first. Accept and install. And let's restart. See Crystal Diskmark, what it does now. Okay, so we know it's not the solid state drive. We know now that this is motherboard related because we're seeing it happening equally here. So I want to just take a look one more time on the motherboard driver site and see if there's anything for SATA. There's a RAID driver only. So what am I missing? So that means we have a completely different problem here. Something is definitely not right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that test. All right, well, we know it's not the drive. There's two different drives. They're both Western Digital Blues, and they're both underperforming where they should be. So something somewhere is not set right. maybe Windows Update will give an updated SATA driver. That's entirely possible. Very possible. Let me grab an Ethernet cable and try it, because that would make sense if this is just so new that the stuff on the drive isn't updated. Let's try it. All right, we'll wait for these updates to install and we'll see what happens. Okay, let's hit retry on that. Folks, this is an AMD system, so you don't put Intel drivers on an AMD system. This is also the second Western Digital SATA drive, and it's performing the same as the other Western Digital SATA drive. And this drive was tested previously in other videos that showed its performance at around 560. So we're looking for around 560 to be the number we want to hit. And we're just going to go ahead and let Windows Update do what it needs to do, and we'll see if that makes any difference in the process. Now, if this does make a difference, that means all this testing was for nothing. What that means is what I should have done in that instance was, after I did my Acronis restore, then gone to Windows Update. That would be very weird, though, if that were the resolution. But at this point, whatever the resolution is going to be weird, because it's not fitting with anything. Its behavior isn't that it's not working, it's that it's not working the way it should be working. Usually with tech, things are on or off. It's pretty rare that you get something that's in the middle where it's working, but it's not working to the way to its performance of where it should be. It's about 80% working. So At this point, anything is possible. It could be anything from the power supply to the motherboard itself, to some vague setting in the BIOS or some reset of the BIOS, to the limits of just your imagination, really. I could try plugging a regular SATA SSD in it just to see, but since it's all SATA, regardless if the interface is M.2 or SATA cable, I don't expect that to make a difference, but I also didn't expect it to run so slow. So you can't really use assumption. If you want to be a real working tech, you can't use your mind to go, well, it can't be this because of that. You can't. You have to physically test everything, because if it made sense to you, then you would know how to fix it. Because you don't know how to fix it, as I am suffering right now, then the solution isn't something that makes any sense. Therefore, you can't use your mind to go, well, it can't be this or it can't be that. Absolutely can be those things unless you individually test them. It is entirely possible. Everything that you're checking off of your mind that you're too lazy to check, whatever reason you're justifying to not swap the power supply or not swap the RAM, then you would be a horrible, horrible technician. So you have to change everything, but you start with what you think from experience, what you think is most likely the cause. And most likely it's software related, but we'll find out here in a minute. Most likely there's some driver or some setting. It's got to be a driver that's just not compatible, or there's got to be an update to it. We know it's not the solid state drive for a fact. So if everything, if we're lucky, then Windows Updates resolves it for us. But that'll be a first for me. That'll be the first time I've seen that. But this AMD platform is weird. Like I said, I'm used to the Intel platform. So I'm not going to blame Intel, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to blame AMD if that's the case. It's just different. And I'll just be glad if it works, quite frankly. I don't care if I'm right. I just want it to work. Let's go back to Windows Update, make sure we've got them all. Just go back there and check again. That's a big update, so it'll take a minute. Okay, we'll hit restart. Now again, I'm going to go back to Windows Update and just keep repeating that until it tells me there are no more updates. You're up to date. All right. Now, Crystal Disk Mark. See what kind of numbers we get. Are we still in the 400s or are we in 500s? Come on now. Work with me here. Give me 500. Give me 500. Oh, it's getting worse. Oh, we're back in the 400s again. Well, it's consistently bad. My head hurts. Okay. All right, I've seen enough. I have seen enough. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. Let me just stop that and we'll go back over to the main camera. And I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen now. I'm starving. I have to go eat something. I can't even think straight anymore. I know I don't have a bad drive. That's all I know. I know Windows updates aren't fixing it, so it doesn't appear to be a driver-related issue. So what I'm going to have to do now is do a little research on this and see if other people have encountered it and what they've done to fix it. And I'll do that later tonight, and I'll give you guys an update tomorrow with what ends up happening. But what I have to do now is I have to go and eat. So, like I said, there are two completely different SSD drives performing exactly the same. So the common denominator is the motherboard. We've done two fresh installs of Windows 10 and used a pre-existing Windows 10 that was cloned, and it consistently runs the same. So we know it's not Windows. We know it's not the SSD drives. So that means there's a setting perhaps in the BIOS that I'm missing somewhere, maybe flushing the BIOS out and resetting it, or something's wrong with the board. So I don't know yet. That's just what I need to replace one board to get another one that's funky. I am half tempted. I am this close to pulling the Nuka-Cola case out of its box, putting this video card in it and making that the new streamer with the Intel Core i7 8086K. I think that'll be a rockin' and rollin' system. I'll just slap it in, and I can even take the 2 terabyte Western Digital SSD out, slap it into, well, it's already out, slap it into the Nuka-Cola build and restore the backup, and I bet you it'd run fine. But lots of people run AMD systems and they don't have these problems. So there's something I'm missing that's just either I'm getting really bad luck with AMD motherboards, not with the chips, but with the boards, or maybe this power supply is not quite enough. I don't know. I can hook up the kilowatt and see how much power we're drawing. Maybe 600 watts, or maybe that power supply is just not doing well. I've got several power supplies here that I can replace. Generally speaking, when you're not getting enough power, the machine will crash. You'll get a blue screen. You'll get some funky behavior. I can't imagine it would cause a slow SSD speed. But again, the problem doesn't make any sense, so we can't say it. You absolutely can't say it can't be the power supply until you swap it and replace it. Even a power supply tester won't put a load on the power supply to effectively tell you whether or not the power supply is good or bad. All it can test for is voltage and not amperage. Likewise, if you had a bad car battery, you wouldn't know by getting into the car, the lights inside the car would come on, the radio would come on, oh, that's 12 volts and all that'll work. But when you go to turn the engine over and it pulls amps from the battery, the engine won't turn over. That's what happens with power supplies, and that's why they're so difficult to test. So the cheapest power supply tester is buying a cheap power supply, like a $30 or $40 power supply from EVGA or Corsair, and just to have it as a spare. Then if it behaves the same, you could say, okay, it's not the power supply. Now in this case, I need more power than that for the 1080 card. You know, if I was running onboard video, 400 watt, 500 watt power supply, I'll be fine. Running this graphics card, I should probably be at around 650, but it should be fine. So I just don't know. I simply don't know. And because of my hunger, I'm having a really hard time maintaining the extreme amount of focus that's required in the process of elimination. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I've been going for 3.5 hours. I think that's a good length of time. And it'll just be a cliffhanger for tomorrow. So I hope you guys will join me tomorrow, and we'll find out if I'm able to fix it tonight or not. You'll find out tomorrow. For everybody who's contributed, let me give everybody a shout out who's contributed today, and that is Ben DeCour, Adam Sleeth, Dave L., Ben DeCour again, Frump 99, Lord Falk 1, Larry Fick, Grizzlies Place 63, Granddad 47, Planet Cryos, Donnie Seeger, Reviewing, Playing, and More RPM, Ben DeCour a third time, Philip Drake, Mirror, Shane D, Irving T, Edwards 25671, Darren Gilholm, Shane D, Brandon Miller, William Smith, Christoph Esch, Wim VDK. That's a lot of contributions. Thank you guys so much for all your support. And you know, some shows are more complete than others, but hopefully all equally thought provocative anyway. In the meantime, thank you guys, everybody, for joining me. We have 764 people watching live. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I will hopefully see you all back here tomorrow. Magni Johansson just threw a contribution in there of 44 Norwegian kroner. Thank you, Magni, for your contribution, of course. And again, for all of you watching and joining me on the stream today, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you all tomorrow afternoon. Until then, hold on, I'm trying to get ready. Let's see if I can do this on Thready. If you liked the video, hit the like button. Is it gonna work? Oh, it works. And if you want to subscribe, if you want to know when new videos are posted, hit the subscribe and hit the bell icon to tell it you want to be notified. And Dave L just threw in a last minute contribution of £5. So thank you again to Dave L, and to everybody else. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all again tomorrow afternoon. Until then, bye for now.